I'll start with a question. Have you experienced a form of trauma that has left a dent in your life?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, today I'm going to share a source of resilience that transformed my life. One that, if you choose to embrace, could transform yours. But first, I'm going to take you back with a story. So imagine that I'm an impressionable teenager sitting next to an uncle that I idolized. When he turns to me and says, "Some are born stars, effortlessly finding themselves in the sky. But not you. Pero no tú. Tú naciste estrellada en el piso. You were born smashed to the ground, and you will have to work very hard to get up to the sky." What my uncle didn't realize is that I would need to find the inner fuel that could ignite the kind of resilience that could launch a rocket into the sky. You see, resilience doesn't come from being dealt a perfect hand. It comes from learning to play the cards that you're dealt with, and if anything, making them work for you. For me, the cards were complicated. When I was 5 and my sister 3, everything changed. My parents were in the process of getting a divorce. And since my father no longer lived at home, my mom would let us sleep in her bed. That night, I remember my mom tucking us in affectionately. And by the morning, she was gone. We woke up to a mess of clothing scattered on the floor, broken glass in the bathroom, and hunger that drove my sister and I to go knock on a neighbor's door asking for food. The police were called. They would go on to ask my father questions, and then he disappeared, leaving us with questions that no child should have to ask. Had my father killed my mother? Had we been abandoned? My grandmother, Abuela, stepped in, an elderly woman with her own mental struggles. She became the oldest woman in the state of California to adopt children. While she provided for us, affection wasn't a part of the equation. She did the best she could. She just didn't have it in her. But what she did give us was discipline. Abuela sat with us every weekday evening to do homework with us. And it was because of her that my sister and I both got into UCLA. And it was there, surrounded by privilege and kids that had no idea that they had things so good, that I realized how different I was. I felt like an outsider. That's when I started searching to find answers as to what had happened. When I was 19, my uncle that I mentioned before took me to Mexico, where I found my father 14 years after not seeing him. I confronted him, and he gave me a version of events that painted him a victim. He said that my mom had taken off with another man, leaving him devastated and wallowing in alcoholism, and that it was just recently that he just started getting himself together. Even though my father had many imperfections, I had always loved him and accepted him as he was. So I was more than happy to once again have that father-daughter bond. For 10 years, I was a part of his life. I was happy as could be. And then it all unraveled. My uncle has started suffering from these epileptic seizures, and that compelled him to tell us the truth. It turns out that all those years earlier, my father had broken into our house and killed my mother in the same room that we had been sleeping in. I found out that she had valiantly struggled until she could no more, and I found out her last words, "My daughters." That was heartbreaking. That revelation, it devastated me. I spiraled into depression and anxiety and chronic pain. Traditional therapy didn't work. Neither did medication. If anything, it just dulled me, but it never got to the core of my problems. I felt stuck in a cycle of pain and negativity that I just couldn't get out of for the life of me, try as I might. In desperation, I decided to try something that I had previously scoffed at: hypnotherapy. It was in that state of deep focus and relaxation that I was able to access the hard drive of my mind and make pivotal changes. For the first time, I was able to take control of my mind by changing my thought patterns. Session by session, I began to change my narrative from being a victim to being an empowered woman capable of thriving. Hypnotherapy wasn't just a tool. Honestly, it was my turning point. It introduced me to what I call springboard reframes, powerful mental shifts that help you to transform life's hardest difficulties and challenges into the very fuel for your growth. Imagine a trampoline. The harder you fall, the higher you can rise if you're able to harness that energy and you're able to channel it in the right direction. That's what these reframes do. They help you to turn the weight of your pain into the momentum for your ascent. And it's not just positive thinking. These were strategic mental pivots. So I'll give you a really good example. For years, I had this narrative that I was the girl that never felt loved growing up. That really weighed me down because even if I couldn't really admit it to myself, it caused me to question my worth. But thanks to springboard reframing, I became the woman that learned to love herself unconditionally, even if the adults around her as a child had been incapable of doing so. Those weren't just statements. They reshaped my identity. And when I was able to really give myself unconditional love and wholeheartedly committed to myself, I became powerful. For the first time, I could trust myself. And when you can trust yourself, your whole world changes. That's when I realized that resilience isn't about bouncing back to before, because there is no going back to before. But it is about breaking through to something far greater. It's about transforming from survival to thriving. But too often, we get stuck in what I call the external loop, where you're constantly replaying the trauma, the pain, and hurt. We let it shape our identities, even our choices, keeping us stuck in the same patterns that reinforce the very wounds that we want to heal. I've been in that dark place where your trauma becomes your truth and your pain becomes your purpose. And it's a tough place to be in. And I found that the more I was able to release all of that, the better off I was. When I was able to stop focusing on the things that I couldn't change, and I started focusing on the things that I could change, it changed everything. Because I became an empowered woman who took responsibility for her life right now. And that made it so that everything else took a back seat, including the past. And since I was no longer clinging on to it, some amazing things happened, including me being able to forgive my father. Not a small thing. I didn't do it for him. I did it for me because I didn't want to keep carrying the weight of what he had done. Nelson Mandela famously said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemy to die." Well, I say refusing to forgive is like drinking a form of poison that keeps eating at you every day. Oftentimes, we're just really good at carrying it, and we don't even realize its impact in our lives. When I was able to remove that weight, that darkness from myself, I was able to really come into my own. And I realized that when you're not using that precious mental bandwidth on things that you can't change and that will never serve you, what you do is you open yourself to creating something new, something that outshines the past. Here's the shift that I want to share with you. True healing doesn't come from endlessly stirring the pot of all the things that happened in the past. It's about reframing your story so that your mind no longer feels the need to go back to all the crappy stuff from the past. A 2023 study in clinical psychology and psychotherapy found that excessive rumination led to a 47% increase in PTSD symptoms. 47%. Meanwhile, those that focused on cultivating a growth-oriented mindset, they experienced significantly higher recovery rates. Trauma, whatever that looks like for you, is a part of your story. But it doesn't have to define your book. The key is to release its hold over you. And when you do that, you'll find that it turns out that you're not broken. You're just unfinished. Oxford Dictionary defines resilience as the ability to withstand or to quickly recover from difficulties. But I believe that it's more than just withstanding, surviving, or recovery. True healing is your ability to heal past trauma and reclaim your power so that you can be your most expansive and empowered self. So today, I leave you with this. Regardless of what has happened in your life, you can be the person that you have come to this earth to be. Your resilience in the form of unconditional love for yourself and your drive to rewrite your story are what will ignite a transformation that will take you much further than what you've ever imagined. So claim your worth. Create your own springboard reframes and rise above the past, because you have always been meant to be, because you have always been a star that deserves to shine bright. Thank you. Thank you.